the new god of inspiration, the new gods of inspiration, a new god of inspiration, the new goddess of inspiration, the new goddesses of inspiration, a new goddess of inspiration, the old god of inspiration, the old gods of inspiration, a old god of inspiration, the old goddess of inspiration, the old goddesses of inspiration, a old goddess of inspiration, the greater god of inspiration, the greater gods of inspiration, a greater god of inspiration, the greater goddess of inspiration, the greater goddesses of inspiration, a greater goddess of inspiration, the lesser god of inspiration, the lesser gods of inspiration, a lesser god of inspiration, the lesser goddess of inspiration, the lesser goddesses of inspiration, a lesser goddess of inspiration, the greater spirit of inspiration, the greater spirits of inspiration, a greater spirit of inspiration, the lesser spirit of inspiration, the lesser spirits of inspiration, a lesser spirit of inspiration, the major god of inspiration, the major gods of inspiration, a major god of inspiration, the major goddess of inspiration, the major goddesses of inspiration, a major goddess of inspiration, the minor god of inspiration, the minor gods of inspiration, a minor god of inspiration, the minor goddess of inspiration, the minor goddesses of inspiration, a minor goddess of inspiration, the superior god of inspiration, the superior gods of inspiration, a superior god of inspiration, the superior goddess of inspiration, the superior goddesses of inspiration, a superior goddess of inspiration, the inferior god of inspiration, the inferior gods of inspiration, a inferior god of inspiration, the inferior goddess of inspiration, the inferior goddesses of inspiration, a inferior goddess of inspiration, the ancestor god of inspiration, the ancestor gods of inspiration, a ancestor god of inspiration, the ancestor goddess of inspiration, the ancestor goddesses of inspiration, a ancestor goddess of inspiration, the ascendant god of inspiration, the ascendant gods of inspiration, a ascendant god of inspiration, the ascendant goddess of inspiration, the ascendant goddesses of inspiration, a ascendant goddess of inspiration, the descendant god of inspiration, the descendant gods of inspiration, a descendant god of inspiration, the descendant goddess of inspiration, the descendant goddesses of inspiration, a descendant goddess of inspiration, the transcendent god of inspiration, the transcendent gods of inspiration, a transcendent god of inspiration, the transcendent goddess of inspiration, the transcendent goddesses of inspiration, a transcendent goddess of inspiration, the future god of inspiration, the future gods of inspiration, a future god of inspiration, the future goddess of inspiration, the future goddesses of inspiration, a future goddess of inspiration, the present god of inspiration, the present gods of inspiration, a present god of inspiration, the present goddess of inspiration, the present goddesses of inspiration, a present goddess of inspiration, the past god of inspiration, the past gods of inspiration, a past god of inspiration, the past goddess of inspiration, the past goddesses of inspiration, a past goddess of inspiration, the god of inspiration, the gods of inspiration, a god of inspiration, the goddess of inspiration, the goddesses of inspiration, a goddess of inspiration, the half god of inspiration, the half gods of inspiration, a half god of inspiration, the half goddess of inspiration, the half goddesses of inspiration, a half goddess of inspiration, the vessel of inspiration, the vessels of inspiration, a vessel of inspiration, the person of inspiration, the persons of inspiration, a person of inspiration, the image of inspiration, the images of inspiration, a image of inspiration, the imagination of inspiration, the imaginations of inspiration, a imagination of inspiration, the belief of inspiration, the beliefs of inspiration, a belief of inspiration, the thought of inspiration, the thoughts of inspiration, a thought of inspiration, the word of inspiration, the words of inspiration, a word of inspiration, the action of inspiration, the actions of inspiration, a action of inspiration, the reaction of inspiration, the reactions of inspiration, a reaction of inspiration, the situation of inspiration, the situations of inspiration, a situation of inspiration, The circumstance of inspiration. The circumstances of inspiration. A circumstance of inspiration. The relationship of inspiration. The relationships of inspiration. A relationship of inspiration. The number of inspiration. The numbers of inspiration. A number of inspiration. The formula of inspiration. The formulas of inspiration. A formula of inspiration. The equation of inspiration. The equations of inspiration. A equation of inspiration. The symbol of inspiration. The symbols of inspiration. A symbol of inspiration. The color of inspiration. The colors of inspiration. A color of inspiration. The thing of inspiration. The things of inspiration. A thing of inspiration. The way of inspiration. The ways of inspiration. A way of inspiration. The place of inspiration. The places of inspiration. A place of inspiration. The time of inspiration. The times of inspiration. A time of inspiration. The event of inspiration. The events of inspiration. A event of inspiration. The result of inspiration. The results of inspiration. A result of inspiration.